My name no longer matters. What matters is what I carry with me. 13 times I went back in time. 13 attempts to save humanity. And I failed every single one. But this time I won't fight to save everyone. I'll fight to choose who deserves to live. And if for that I have to go all the way, then let the whole world be my hunting ground. Once again, that world and all of humanity was on the verge of annihilation. One of the men, in disbelief, asked why this was happening again. In front of him, a dark being was amused by a mere human's audacity to question him. Sitting on a throne made of bones, the being just watched as the man, with courage, brandished his sword and shouted, "I did everything I could," but the creature didn't seem convinced. On the contrary, mocking him even more, he showed several people in suits and ties. The man recognized every face there. They were all groaning his name, asking why this was happening. They looked empty, as if they had lost their souls. Chu Guanyak, visibly nervous, tried to justify himself with a trembling voice. "To save everyone, but he couldn't even finish. A woman appeared out of nowhere and cut him off with a direct question. Is that really true? Or do you just believe it?" He was in shock. He didn't even have time to react, because from the other side, a man with a calm expression appeared saying, "You will fall into the abyss." And suddenly, he was surrounded. People with dead eyes looking like zombies shouted his name at the same time. "You're going to hell." Scared, he looked around, trying to make everyone be quiet. In desperation, he shouted, "Do you really think you would do better?" It was then that he heard a soft voice calling, "Brother." He turned around instantly and saw a young woman. The wind blew her hair. T was Ha-Young-si. He ran to her, calling her name, but she just turned around and walked away in the opposite direction. He tried to follow her, but the other people grabbed his legs, preventing him from moving forward. He saw Ha-Yeon disappearing on the horizon, stretching out his hand, trying to reach her, with tears in his eyes. It was clear he didn't want any of this, but he was soon swallowed by the crowd. In the background, he could only hear someone calling, like an echo, "Hunter, Hunter Nyok, Hunter Chu Guanyak." That's when he woke up with a start, sweating cold and in complete shock. The scene changes and we are taken to another place, a dark dungeon. Inside, our protagonist was walking alongside two other people. One of them had just received a message. The preparations for the inspection were ready. The problem was that the number of hunters who needed to be contained was only increasing, and there weren't enough people to use Morpheus's avatar. It was at that moment that Nyok stopped, looking away towards one of the cells. With a heavy tone, he commented, "If Sigmund were alive, he could have saved everyone." Inside the cell, a woman was scratching the wall with her nails, muttering to herself, "We need to go up. We're all going to die." But when he looked at her, Nyok's thought changed. Even if he had left Sigmund alive, humanity would have been destroyed all the same. Knowing this, he just started walking again. The man who was with him lowered his head, as if he agreed. Nyok was right. After taking a last look at the facilities, the protagonist thought about expanding them in the future, and then left. As soon as he walked away, the two people who were with him seemed relieved. One wiped the sweat from his forehead, and the woman let out a long sigh, clearly exhausted. "He's more difficult than I imagined," she said. It was the first time she had seen Nyok up close. The man next to her, adjusting his glasses, replied, "Yeah, just by looking at him, you can't believe this is the guy who conquered Babel for humanity. He seems too cold to be called a hero." The woman fell silent, and the two continued walking down the corridors. The man continued, "But that's precisely why he succeeded. While the other hunters who fought with him in Babel were being corrupted, it was his coldness that prevented everything from falling apart. That's what saved humanity." Suddenly, a prisoner grabbed the cell bars tightly. With wide, desperate eyes, he shouted, "Please, let me out!" But he was completely ignored. The loud scream echoed, shaking the entire place. From afar, Nyok could still hear Sigmund's screams echoing, but as he turned the corner, he was surprised by a man running towards him, completely desperate. "What's going on here?" Nyok asked, already tense. The guy tried to explain but could barely speak. Stuttering, he just let out a name, Youngshi. At the same moment, Nyok froze. His body locked up for a few seconds, as if that name had paralyzed everything around him. Meanwhile, in the control room, the alarm wouldn't stop sounding. As soon as Nyok entered, he was greeted with urgency. The invasion started in California. The entire west and north of the United States have already been taken, and the east is also collapsing. We need your orders now. Nyok's eyes widened. A single thought echoed in his mind. Damn, why did I hesitate? Without answering, he turned on his heels and started to leave the room. One of the officials, scared, asked, "Wait, where are you?" "Going?" Nyok just replied firmly, "I'll go there myself." His gaze became serious, his expression hard, and finally, he frowned, ready to face whatever came. The next scene is brutal. We see the cruel cut of a sword going through a blonde woman's body. Nyok, our protagonist, was there, leaning on her shoulders, calling her name with a choked voice, Youngsi. She was coughing up blood, weakened, but still managed to say, "Brother, I believed in you." The surrounding scenery was a real hell, a battlefield covered with scattered bones, destroyed buildings, and the smell of death in the air. Even so, Nyok kept the sword stuck in her. Tears ran down his face, falling silently as Youngsi reached out her hand to him and thanked him. Soon after, she fell, without strength, covered in blood, dead. Nyok stayed there, kneeling, motionless. He could only say with a broken voice, "I love you." The wind blew hard, messing up his hair, but other than that, everything was silent. Only he remained there, in that desolate scenario. In front of Nyok, the world had fallen once again. The buildings were in ruins. Humanity, once again, had been annihilated. But maybe, just maybe, the answer to prevent all this from happening again was about to emerge. Inside the final dungeon known as Babel, at the top of the Tyrant King's tower, a new final confrontation was taking place. Nyok, our protagonist, was facing the Tyrant King himself in a brutal battle. The enemy advanced ferociously, laughing desperately, as if this were the climax of everything. With an insane look and a sadistic smile on his face, he shouted, "The tyrant of the 12 divine thrones, the strongest and last hunter of humanity, your power will also be mine." With a violent blow, he threw Nyok against the wall. The impact was strong. Blood stained the floor, the wall, everything. It was then that, amid the destruction, long blonde hair appeared. A woman appeared and reached out her hand, concentrating a golden power that enveloped her body in an intense glow. The Tyrant King laughed, surprised. What? There was still one more? He looked down at her with contempt. Now that the strongest hunter, Chu Gong-hyuk, has fallen, what do you, a simple girl, think you can do? But she didn't hesitate. With a firm look, she murmured, "Veil of immortality." And that's when, without warning, Chu Gong-hyuk plunged his sword straight into the Tyrant King's chest. "What? Why are you still alive?" The creature screamed in shock. Nyok smiled, confident. "For God's sake, you're still the same idiot as always, lowering your guard so easily." The Tyrant King tried to recompose himself, certain that that injury would not be enough to stop him. But then, something caught his attention. Below his feet, a golden magic circle shone intensely. He looked around, confused, not understanding how that had appeared. It was too late. Magic chains emerged from the ground, holding his body tightly. It was the powerful Gleipnir chain. With the enemy completely immobilized, Nyok raised his hand and invoked the avatar of Zeus. Divine energy exploded across the field, and the Tyrant King's face contorted in pure horror. "No! How dare you? You are just a human!" Our hero takes a long sigh before stating, "A mere human? How rude of you." With a condescending smile, he makes a rude gesture with his finger and returns the kindness. "You low-class demon." The tyrant screams in pain as the divine chains and sacred energy consume him completely. A colossal explosion engulfs the entire area, shaking the tower to its core. Our protagonist calmly took a pack of cigarettes from his pocket and slowly lit one, inhaling it as a gesture of victory. Looking at his opponent, who was now defeated on the ground, he states with a click of his tongue, "Even if you're going to die anyway, you're giving me a hard time." The next moment, Nyok turns to Youngsi. He recognizes how decisive her shield was at that moment. It was what guaranteed victory. But looking at the girl's face, he only sees tears. She stares at him, her voice trembling. "If it were my older brother, he would have saved everyone, and us, who believed in you, who followed you." A heavy silence takes over the place. The next scene shows the bodies scattered across the field, piles of fallen allies, and then her scream echoes with pain. "Why didn't you protect us?" Tears run down Youngsi's face as she confronts him. The pain is clear. She wants to understand. She wants to know if all of that was worth it, if his obsession with defeating the demon lord really justified all that sacrifice. Nyok, without responding immediately, puts the cigarette to his mouth once more and inhales in silence. A slight ironic smile appears on the corner of his lips, and then the truth comes to light. He had regressed 13 times, 13 attempts, 13 failures. No matter what he did, if he won, if he lost, If he retreated or advanced, the result was always the same: the end of the world. Ruin was inevitable. The real cause of everything? A brutal war. It started between the new humans, the so-called hunters, and the old humans, guided by a distorted vision of salvation. They said they would turn the world into a paradise, but to do that, they tried to merge human minds into a collective consciousness. Behind it all was a crazed hunter, a man destroyed by trauma from massacre and survival. A survivor, or rather a prisoner, confined in a psychiatric hospital. It was he who was leading all this. Meanwhile, the world was falling apart. Families fled from killer hunters who had lost control of their own avatars. Not even the weakest escaped. The elderly, children, everyone was dragged into the chaos. And the worst part, in every timeline, the world he saved ended up perishing all the same. It was then that Nyok threw the cigarette on the ground, clenched his fist around the sword, and revealed his true mission: eliminate all those who threatened the destruction of the world. Not just the Demon King's army, but everyone. Anyone who put humanity at risk. The decision weighed on his body. His hand trembled. Youngsi's eyes widened, understanding what was to come. But before she could do anything, she was eliminated. Without mercy, Nyok was paralyzed. Something was wrong. It wasn't him. He knew. It wasn't him who killed her. He turned around instantly, and there he was, the Tyrant King, still alive. "You brat!" he roared, furious. "With that level of skill, did you really think you could beat me?" Taken over by rage, the king made the ground explode with lava spikes that advanced straight towards Nyok. He tried to escape, but it wasn't enough. Soon our hero was spitting blood. The Tyrant King laughed, triumphant. "You said you defeated me 6 times? Ha! Say that in your sleep." Nyok, even fallen, replied with a weak but firm voice. "In the 10th regression, I defeated you alone. That's why this time I focused on the hunters first. But I guess the damage was a little less than necessary." He paused. "Could it be because I left the sacred spear Longinus on the 65th floor? If only I had the avatar of King Ashura or of Uranus, the combination would have been perfect." The Tyrant King frowned. "How do you know these names? And about the Longinus? There's no mission with that information." Nyok raised his eyes, staring at the enemy with a slight smile. "I already told you, remember? I defeated you 6 times. And then he completed with conviction. "And I'll take you down again." The king let out a mocking laugh. He couldn't believe that humans still dared to joke in that situation. But without patience for any more delays, he held out his hands, releasing his power. Enough nonsense. Nyok, however, didn't retreat. He lowered his head, let out a slight laugh. He was also tired of all this. It was time to end it. He raised his arms, and at that moment his face began to transform. Half of it took on a skeletal form. With his eyes burning with determination, he declared that both his enemy's army and the hunters would all be eliminated, hoping to put an end to this regression. Curse! The scene changes, and we are thrown directly into a new year, where the Tyrant King reappears, this time hovering over a modern city. His eyes glowed with an intense gold, and the sadistic smile was accompanied by a sinister line: "Inferior beings, be swallowed by the vortex of terror." The guy really wanted to see all the humans in this new dimension exterminated by his army, feeling so much fear that they would scream to death. People were in shock, not knowing how to react. It didn't take long for this terror to spread across the entire world. From the point where that light appeared, 2,088 dungeons emerged in various places on the planet, and with them came an invasion of monsters. The human army was even confident at the beginning. Many soldiers laughed, thinking that those somewhat bizarre and apparently stupid creatures would be easy to eliminate. Just shoot them, they thought, but it didn't take long for reality to hit hard. As soon as the shots hit, an explosion happened, raising dust and debris, and when the smoke cleared, there were the monsters, firm, horrendous, and thirsty for blood, without even a scratch. That's when it clicked. Modern weapons didn't even tickle them. The front lines began to retreat, but it was already too late. The chance to escape was gone. In the middle of this chaos, when humanity was already being crushed by a feeling of total helplessness, a group that changed the game emerged, the so-called hunters. They started to appear right at that moment when people were crying in fear, thinking they were going to die. These hunters were awakened humans, capable of invoking avatars, which were nothing more than powerful versions of themselves. Depending on each person's personality, these avatars took on unique forms, like heroes, gods, or even legendary creatures. With them on the front line, hope began to shine again. Gradually, the hunters managed to lead a counterattack. They occupied the dungeons one by one, even with a very high price. More than 1 billion people dead worldwide. Humanity was bleeding, but still resisted. But what no one expected was what came next. When everyone thought the worst was over, a message came that left everyone speechless. Everything they had faced so far, the invasion, the terror, the monsters, was nothing more than a simple tutorial. This is just the beginning, a soldier murmured, his voice trembling, almost choking on the words. This can't be true. That instant of pure shock, an intense light appeared behind him. A strong but gentle voice echoed, "To all of humanity, I, Archangel Metatron, have a request for all of you." The celestial figure that appeared looked like a woman, with long hair fluttering in an almost magical way. She continued calmly, "Until now, we have managed to contain the Demon King and the dimensional invaders as much as possible. But now we can only maintain some laws and restrictions. That's why we need your help." Metatron explained that some hunters would be chosen for the next great invocation, and these would have to head towards the final dungeon, known as Babel. There they would need to climb floor by floor until they reached the top, defeat the Tyrant King, and complete the dungeon. The soldiers, even full of doubt, listened carefully, half not believing any of it. With the same serenity, she added, "If Babel is not completed within 20 years, even stronger monsters will be released. And then it won't just be humanity. This entire dimension will be destroyed." But before despair could take over, she completed, "There is still hope. Hunters can get infinitely stronger in Babel, and we, angels, promise to support you as much as possible." After these words, Metatron held out her hands, emitting an even more intense light, blessing everyone in that dimension. It was as if a new cycle had begun. It didn't take long, and there were already people in the dungeons facing absurd dangers. But not everyone was prepared. Some awakened ones used curses or flaming powers, but the monsters barely felt a tickle. They gave their all, but it seemed useless. The front line, which was responsible for the group's defense, was being crushed, and the warriors began to retreat. One of them, in total panic, shouted, I don't want to die! I'm not going to die in a place like this!" While running, this guy ended up tripping badly. He fell, rolling several times until he stopped on the ground, completely vulnerable. The creature, huge and brutal, raised its double-edged axe, ready to finish the job. One of his companions shouted with anger and despair, "Hey man, get up, you idiot! How long are you going to stay lying there?" But it seemed too late. The monster brought its arm down hard, and everyone thought the guy had been turned into a pulp. The creature then turned to the others, its eyes glowing with fury, making everyone panic and run to save themselves, leaving the fallen guy behind. That guy on the ground was none other than our protagonist, Chu Gonghik, a veteran with more than 200 years of life and going through his 10th regression. Lying there, covered in dust, he let out a wry smile and muttered, "I almost died as soon as I arrived." Now on his feet, Gonghik walked slowly to the body of a fallen man, and the sound of his steps echoed across the dirty dungeon floor. With a look of slight pity, or maybe sarcasm, he commented, "Thanks, you... No. If you hadn't taken the aggro, I would have been done for." He knelt beside the body and, without ceremony, began to search the pockets, while calling his avatar, "Off server, send the report." Other hunters approached in a hurry. One of them shouted, "Sorry, we're late." One of the guys on the front line was barely holding a barrier of energy with his hands. Panting and seeing the reinforcement arrive, he shouted in desperation, "Quick! 2 more have fallen!" But one of the hunters, Zae, pointed in Gonghik's direction, surprised to see him crouch down. What's he doing? Is he in shock? Meanwhile, Gonghik pulled from the corpse's pocket a pack of cigarettes and a lighter. "Bingo," he smiled, relieved. He lit the cigarette calmly, took a long drag, and muttered with satisfaction, "As I suspected, the first cigarette after regression is always the best." Soon, several system windows began to appear in front of him, the result of the avatar's analysis. They showed that they were in tutorial number 589, facing the boss, Fierce Minotaur. It was the 8th attack team from Seoul, and the report showed the living members and those who had already been eliminated, including a woman named Ha Youngsi. At that moment, Youngsi herself called him, waking him from his immersion in the data. "Hey, partner, it's dangerous here. Get back to the rear." She was only 19, and her avatar was the goddess Miko. But before he could answer, another hunter shouted, "Man, help! Out! Don't just stand there!" The team's eyes turned to Gonghik in shock when they saw that he was still smoking, in the middle of the chaos. With a completely sarcastic tone, he replied, "Relax, give me 2 more minutes, and when I finish this cigarette, I'll kill him." But he was outraged. "Are you kidding? This is real. You can really die. Remember that when it's all over." But Gonghik didn't even blink. He took another calm drag, let out the smoke, and replied with a carefree look, "You're too rushed. Are you really going to end this today? Youngsi, worried, watched his carefree attitude, not understanding where it was going. It was then that he finally moved. He put the cigarette away, drew his sword, and advanced with speed. His gaze changed. He was completely focused. As soon as he approached the creature, he drew its attention. But he soon realized something. The Minotaur was fast, very fast. Too fast to be followed normally, so he concluded that there was only one way to defeat it, by anticipating every movement. A confident smile formed on his face. The Minotaur let out a deafening roar, its red eye glowing with hatred at seeing its new opponent. It squeezed its weapon hard, preparing to attack. Gonghik, in turn, was not intimidated. He watched carefully, and, at the exact moment, dodged the axe blow as if it were easy. And then, he counterattacked. A clean, precise, and powerful cut. The creature screamed in pain. The smile on Gonghik's face became even more savage. He spun in the air like an insane dancer, his face distorted with pure excitement. The Minotaur roared again, mouth open, ready for another attack. But our hero mocked. Opening that big mouth again, huh? I'm gonna tear it off, you weakling. With a brutal blow, he buried the blade in the creature's body, bringing the monster down to the ground. He landed, laughing, mocking his allies as if the enemy had only been a warm-up. A predatory glow appeared in his eyes. It was obvious. He felt genuine pleasure in that battle. But suddenly, everything changed. A spasm, a sharp pain exploded in his back. It caught Gonghik completely by surprise, and his body stiffened. Instantly, Gonghik gritted his teeth hard and looked down. That's when he saw it. The Minotaur's arm was still gripping his leg with absurd strength. The grip became even more intense, making it clear that beast was far from defeated. Its red eyes burned with fury, and a low growl escaped its monstrous throat. Gonghik's companions froze, terrified. Shock took over the group, and Youngsi screamed in a panic, realizing that it had all been a trap. Gonghik was frustrated. Even after so many regressions, even with all the experience, his current attributes hadn't been enough to finish that thing off. The Minotaur's eye narrowed, glowing even more with that insane rage. Thinking that victory was certain, it let out a deafening roar, raising its arm ready to crush Gonghik once and for all. But the hunter reacted in the blink of an eye. With a precise movement, he plunged the sword directly into the creature's eye, forcing the blade all the way in. Stop thrashing, you useless thing. Just accept that you lost. Soon, I'll send your little friends to the afterlife, too. His voice came out cold, almost mocking. With a push, Gonghik ripped out the creature's eyeball, making blood spurt everywhere. A system window suddenly appeared with that classic mission complete sound. Victory confirmed. Gonghik's allies were left speechless by the absurd turnaround. Soon after, the raid results appeared on the screen. He alone caused more than 80% of the total damage. Titles and rewards began to pop up on the interface, confirming the complete dominance he had in the battle. But with the fight finally over, his body couldn't take it anymore. Gonghik fell to his knees, collapsing completely. His companions, worried, asked if he was okay. He ignored the pain, gritted his teeth, and tried to get up with difficulty. His gaze filled with a somber determination. The others noticed right away. His knee was destroyed. It wasn't something a simple healing spell could fix. They started trying to keep him awake, talking to him, trying to cheer him up, but they knew it was serious. Inside, Gonghik was cursing himself. He couldn't believe he had messed up right at the end. That's when Youngsi appeared, pushing everyone away in desperation. She ran to him and, without thinking twice, activated a special ability. Her hands began to glow with an intense green energy, and soon a bunch of flowers began to materialize around his leg. It was a rare healing spell, slowly restoring all that damage. While Youngsi was working on the cure, she didn't stop talking to him, her voice full of worry. Please don't overdo it anymore. If something worse happens to you, I won't be able to face everyone at the orphanage. Her hands trembled slightly, but the spell remained firm. Even so, Gonghik remained with his eyes closed, motionless, as if he had passed out completely. She insisted, begging him to wake up. It was then that, suddenly, he opened his eyes and got up slowly, letting out a grunt. Are you worrying about them before me, huh? Immediately, Youngsi felt a weight lift from her chest. A sigh of relief escaped her without her even realizing it. Shortly after, the squad leader, Park Jun-tae, better known as the Bronze Giant, appeared, clapping his hands and smiling. Good job, everyone. I imagine you're exhausted after this capture. Rest well today. The wounded have already been treated. He didn't waste time and went straight to what everyone was waiting for, the distribution of rewards. Several system windows opened in front of each hunter, showing the the individual gains. While most were celebrating, Gong-hik looked at the screen and let out a heavy sigh. What he had received seemed insignificant compared to the effort he had put in. He clicked his tongue, irritated. "You have to be kidding me." At the same moment, Gong-hik faced the leader directly. "You're just distributing garbage." And without ceremony, he held out his hand. Hand over the skill. Coin. That coin was rare. When used, it granted a permanent skill, and was worth a fortune on the market. Park Jun-tae was visibly uncomfortable, trying to think of a justification, but before he could speak, a squad member jumped into the conversation. "What did you say, you brat? Even if you made the best plays in the end, you want to monopolize the most valuable coin?" The guy seemed about to explode with every word, puffing with anger like a small dog trying to act tough. Gong-hik, of course, didn't miss the chance to poke fun. "Calm down, pincher." The guy narrowed his eyes, gritting his teeth, until he couldn't hold back anymore. He clenched his fists and shouted, "I'll make sure you never use that insolent mouth again." He was about to throw a punch when Park Jun-tae stepped in, trying to calm things down. The leader activated his special ability. His body began to change, gaining the texture and resistance of pure bronze, ready to separate the two before the fight escalated. The guy felt a throbbing pain in his hand after hitting what looked like a stone wall, Park Jun-tae's bronze body. The leader let out a sigh, took the coin, and apologized. "Even if the rules say to distribute according to contribution, I couldn't help but be greedy." Then he held out his hand to Gong-hik. "Here, take it." It was the extremely rare coin with the instant death ability. Gong-hik took it without hesitation, grabbed Youngsi's hand and pulled her out of there, grumbling about the leader's attitude. But before they got too far, another man intercepted him, grabbing his collar. "Do you have any idea of the value of a coin like this? How can you give away something so precious of your own free will?" The scene caught the attention of the entire group, who began to question what Park Sang-min thought he was doing with the captain. Jun-tae tried to calm the mood. "We are comrades. There's no need to be so angry." He activated his ability again, his body returning to be covered in the metallic texture, and with a malicious smile he completed, "It wasn't my choice, I just followed the rules." Sang-min was silent for a moment, took a deep breath, and let go of the captain. Then, in a serious tone, he shot out, "If you think you're untouchable just because you have skills, one day even that bronze head of yours will be crushed." Before Gong-hik and Yongsi could leave for good, Sang-min called them back. Gong-hik, not caring, scratched his nose pretending he wasn't even listening. But the man spoke seriously. "This is a world where people kill each other for an item or a coin. You saw those dead hunters around here, didn't you? If you don't want to end up like them, change your attitude and let go of that disgusting greed." Gong-hik's response was clear. He raised his middle finger and waved it as if it were a friendly goodbye. Yongsi looked at him and asked if he was really okay. She warned that if the rumors spread, he could be banned from any attack squad. He just let out the smoke from a newly lit cigarette and replied unbothered, "I don't hang out with weaklings. Just you and I are enough." Yongsi burst out laughing, but then asked, surprised, "How did I not know you smoked?" Gong-hik took a deep breath, ran his hand through her hair and said, "Even after reviving 10 times, you're still as cute as before." She was confused, not understanding. He just took another drag, while in his mind he remembered every moment he had to kill her, and in a somber thought he wondered, "When will I have to kill you again?" We are taken to Sirome Academy. In the inner courtyard, a child was having fun floating in the air while invoking their avatar, Icarus. He wasn't the only one. Several others were doing the same, laughing and competing to see who could go higher, until one of them whispered, "If Youngse finds out, she'll be mad." And sure enough, she appeared at the door with a frown, already knowing that she had warned 1,000 times not to use their skills inside. Youngse was known as the Gang, Grandma, a title that irritated her just to hear. And when she started running after them, the children laughed and floated even faster down the corridors. They flew past our protagonist's room. Sitting on the bed, Gong-hik ignored the racket and opened his status window. His gaze was serious. He was thinking about the mission. This was his 13th regression to prevent the extinction of humanity. Hundreds of years had already passed, and he knew he was already at his limit as a human. Seeing his mental strength marked at -50 points, he thought, "I think this regression will be the last." He invoked his observer avatar and asked it to display the status screen. He remembered well. Normal coins were categorized by the colors of the rainbow. Each hunter and avatar had a hidden potential, which was only revealed by using the coin. There was no right way to spend it. Gong-hik then began to press the button to invest 80 coins in strengthening his avatar. He confirmed the operation, and soon a sequence of system windows popped up, announcing the level increase. Converted, those 82 coins were worth about 32 million won. He let out a slight smile, imagining the face Youngsi would make if she knew the size of the investment. The avatar had just reached level 9, releasing the long-awaited synchronization option. Gonghik didn't think twice and confirmed the request. An information reading window appeared, and the avatar slowly approached, ready to start the process. But the moment it touched him, it stopped in shock. Gonghik held its hand firmly, pulling it close and speaking in a low, intense tone. "You see it, don't you? Your future self, inside my memories." The avatar swallowed hard, a cold sweat running down its temple. On the outside, an intense glow began to escape through the crack of the bedroom door, illuminating the corridor. The system interface appeared before them with an impactful notification. Unique skill acquired, forced awakening. The message continued to explain that the original form was being expanded, with the potential confirmed. The process, however, seemed brutal. The avatar let out a grunt, activating its second skill, prediction, which allowed it to calculate possible future scenarios. Gonghik, without hesitation, opened his hand and projected a grid-shaped hologram. Several red dots began to flash on the map, thus releasing his third skill, tracking enemies, and displaying them in real time. Even with all this progress, the avatar had already reached the limit of awakening. To unlock the final skills, 5 coins from the Navy category would be needed. Gonghik analyzed the status calmly, closed the windows, and, without giving explanations, deactivated all the skills. He turned to the avatar, giving a slight nod, "Good job," and ended the matter there. Outside Saram Academy, shadows moved discreetly, observing the lights escaping from the windows. The repetitive sound of an axe scratching the ground echoed in the silence, mixed with muffled conversations about someone who had taken all the skill coins. When the axe was rested on its owner's shoulder, it was clear it was an entire group, and the most irritated of them growled, "That's why I came to kill him now." Beside him, one of his companions was sweating nervously. "Is he okay? He defeated a minotaur alone, didn't he?" Then, a mysterious hooded man muttered that anyone would be done, for if they were caught by surprise. They asked him to show his avatar, Devour, but the man just replied, "The 7th great invocation of the Tower of Babel is coming. I need to be strong enough to crush anyone. If I devour the healing avatar and the avatar of the hunter who killed the minotaur alone, I can reach rank B." He clenched his fists, confident, but before he could sink further into this thought, a scream cut through the air. One of his companions had been attacked, and there was Gonghik, holding a bloody knife, staring at the hooded man. Humans have little muscle. It's not very satisfying to stab. The group froze, surprised, but the red-haired man reacted quickly, delivering a heavy blow with the axe while also smiling. "So it's you, little thief. The rumors were true. You have courage. Too bad you're a little weak." He pressed the axe against Gonghik's knife, but the hunter didn't retreat. On the contrary, he mocked, "If you want to show strength, try a sumo, stable." With a quick jump, he got out of the hold, took a few steps back, and assessed the situation. Without wasting time, he crossed the space between them with a precision technique, opening a gap and taking down 2 enemies at once with the skill situational judgment. He moved with a sharp sense of combat, almost dancing between opponents, every step and blow calculated. In a fight against humans, I definitely don't lose. But then his eyes turned to the hooded man. What kind of monster is this guy? The man gritted his teeth, and one of his companions stepped forward, confident that he could handle the situation. But before he could even act, the hooded man opened his mouth grotesquely and shouted, "Avatar! Ungoliant!" A creature appeared on the spot. Green skin, red eyes burning with hatred, teeth too sharp to be human. Gonghik gritted his teeth, certain that that was not an avatar, but a real monster. The redhead didn't waste time and ordered, "Tear him to pieces." Gonghik faced the enemy without a hint of fear, and in the blink of an eye invoked his avatar, Observer. She appeared right behind him, floating with a cold and calculating presence. She activated her skill prediction, and dozens of holographic screens opened around the opponent, marking every possible attack point. The reading was clear. The red-haired man would make a simple, quick strike aimed at Gonghik's head. Anticipating the movement, he crouched at the exact moment, dodging with ease. With the observer by his side, he could predict every move, dancing through the air and escaping all of them as if it were a game. "Come from wherever you want," he provoked, smiling with satisfaction. The redhead, increasingly irritated, couldn't believe what he was seeing. No attack landed. His blows became desperate, but the result was always the same. A clean, almost elegant dodge. Then, in a perfect jump, Gong-ik appeared above the opponent and brought the blade down with a clean and precise cut. Blood spurted as the redhead fell, powerless, at the feet of the mysterious man. The hooded man blinked, not understanding how it had ended so quickly, until he felt Gong-hik's suffocating presence right behind him. Turning, he tried to ask why he was doing this, but the answer came with a precise blow. "For the same reason as you," the blade cut through the air. "I am a murderer." Gong-hik's smile was cold, confident, almost challenging the next one to try. The hooded man took a paw, leap back, gritting his teeth, visibly irritated by Gong-hik's audacity. Suddenly, something seemed to occur to him, and he began to rummage through his cloak, nervous. "Where is it?" Gong-hik opened a provocative smile. "The thing you're looking for is this?" He spun a human weapon between his fingers before holding it firmly by the handle. "A weapon that doesn't work against dungeon monsters. I wonder why it's in circulation." Before the hooded man could react, a shot echoed. The Chiwar bullet went through one of his allies, who fell with a scream. "Retreat!" the man yelled, but it was too late. Gong-hik spun the weapon, aiming precisely and shooting at everyone in front of him. A sadistic smile formed on his face, as if he were savoring every shot. When the last one fell, he calmly walked among the bodies, smoke still coming from the barrel. He stopped in front of the mysterious man and, with a kick, knocked him down. "What are you doing?" he asked, pointing the barrel directly at him. "It's obvious you're not dead, are you?" The man clicked his tongue, but before he could react, another shot rang out. Gong-hik, with a look of fake pity, commented, "If you were going to kill me, you should have done it last time." The shot had hit the ground, right next to the head of Park Juntai, who instinctively transformed his body into bronze. Gong-hik approached, his voice sharp. "You were going to kill me, and Yongsi too. Then you were going to blame that bald guy. From the dungeon, weren't you?" The captain stammered, denying it, but froze when he saw the barrel aimed straight at his forehead. "Are your eyes also made of bronze?" Gong-hik asked firmly. Fear made Juntai tremble, begging him not to shoot. Coldly, Gong-hik continued, "The secret society, the Giants. You're just one of their henchmen, aren't you?" Surprised, Juntai wanted to know how he knew that. Gong-hik narrowed his eyes and ordered, "Send a message to them. The small fish who sold their soul for a miserable reward will have a pathetic end. The savior hates small fish." The captain, still trembling, said he would do it. But Gong-hik, without mercy, pulled the trigger. A shrill scream filled the air when Juntai fell backward, covering his eyes. Gong-hik was unbothered. He lit a cigarette, letting out the smoke as if nothing had happened. With his foot pressed on the captain's chest, he aimed at the other eye. Juntai begged, and Gong-hik asked, "What should I have said? To them?" The captain took a deep breath and replied with firmness, "That the weaklings who sold their souls for a miserable reward will have a pathetic end. The savior hates weaklings." Gong-hik opened a blood-stained smile. Good memory. Then, just to intimidate him more, he unloaded shots against the bronze body, shouting, "Now get out of my sight!" Juntai stumbled away, desperate, while Gong-hik inhaled another cigarette, satisfied. Mission accomplished. He had just eliminated the famous gang of assassins, winning the titles Soul Man to Man and Duelist on the line of death. The orc dungeon was taken over by silence and the smell of blood. The floor was a carpet of fallen bodies, their grunts replaced by a deadly silence. Between the shadows, the sound of footsteps echoed until a dry crack broke the heavy air. An orc was hit with brutal force in the face, blood splattering as its body spun and fell to the ground. "Nice shot," Gong-hik murmured with a carefree smile, spinning his weapon before positioning it again. Another orc, still conscious, looked at him with wide eyes, letting out a trembling sigh. Then, a bigger and more robust one raised its hands, its desperate voice echoing down the corridor. "I give up. I surrender. I won't attack humans anymore." Gong-hik raised an eyebrow, curious. "I swear. I really swear," the orc repeated, almost kneeling. "Huh," was all Gong-hik answered, leaving a heavy silence in the air. Then, with a half-smile, he added, "In that case, if you answer this riddle, I'll let you go." The orc lit up with hope, almost panting. Really?" Gong-hik raised a finger and calmly asked, "What is red and explodes in 1 second?" The orc blinked, confused. "Oomph." He tried to reason, his face furrowed, not realizing that the real danger was not in the question, but in the answer that was to come. The orc barely had time to process the question. An intense light cut through the air along with the system message. Activating skill, one-hit kill. Gong-hik advanced in a blur, and the impact echoed like thunder inside the dungeon. Blood and fragments flew everywhere as the orc's body fell lifelessly. With a cold smile and his face splattered with red, Gonghik murmured, "The answer is your head, idiot." Soon a new notification appeared. "You have eliminated the entire Orc warrior squad." Several blue windows began to pop up around him, listing rewards and titles obtained. He remained there, with the sword in his hand, as if the massacre had been just another ordinary Tuesday. It was then that a female voice echoed behind him. "Wasn't that a little exaggerated?" Gonghik turned and raised an eyebrow. "Exaggerated?" He shrugged, pointing to her. "They were going to die anyway. After a year, you get used to it." Without wasting time, he called, "Avatar, Observer." His partner appeared enveloped in blue energy, and a new window glowed. "Navy Coin X5. He smiled. "Awaken the mind's eye." Another notification exploded in the air. "Activating skill, Forced Awakening." The Observer began to shine intensely, her body emanating an overwhelming power. The final message didn't take long. "Observer's final skill unlocked, Mind's Eye." Her visor opened, revealing a radiant blue eye, shining like a living jewel. Gonghik closed his eyes for an instant, feeling the weight of the energy flowing through the Observer. Ready. With this, the preparations are complete. Yongxi, who was collecting the drops, approached. "I've already got all the items. Let's go back to Saram Academy." But Gonghik didn't move. His eyes narrowed. "We're not going back, at least not for a while." Yongxi stared at him confused. "Huh?" He looked down at the floor and, with a calm voice, asked, "Didn't you think we were carrying more weight than usual today?" Before she could answer, a red magic circle glowed under their feet. The heat rose along with a pulling sensation in her stomach. "Ah!" Yongxi screamed, recognizing what it was. Gonghik confirmed, with a serious look. "Yes, it's the great invocation of the Tower of Babel." Across the city, other hunters were dragged to the same destination, enveloped by the spell. The Archangel's voice echoed in his mind. The seventh invocation, the chosen ones, the only ones with the potential to face the Demon King. But the truth was cruel. So far, the number of survivors was 0. A man screamed in desperation as he was sucked in by the spell. "Why me? I don't want to go!" The tower's power gave no choice. The Archangel's wings hovered over the scene, watching from above. Metatron, Sirius, confirmed. "All hunters with the potential to defeat the Demon King have already been summoned, right? This is our last hope." The Archangel's voice echoed with a mixture of determination and weight. On the other side, a figure with long reddish hair bowed their head in respect. "Don't worry, my lady. I, Azazel, will turn these humans into ultimate weapons." The Archangel closed her eyes and nodded. "I'm counting on you." But, as the lights of the invocation illuminated the hall, a strange feeling took over her. What is this? A feeling of déjà vu. Down below, in the eye of the magical hurricane, Gonghik's eyes reflected the red flames of the invocation, and at that moment he frowned, thinking, "This time, I'm going to save the world." Determination burned in his gaze, no matter the cost. A slight movement broke the silence. Yongxi's eyelids trembled, as if she were fighting her own body to wake up. A weak sigh escaped her lips before she heard Gonghik's voice. "Are you awake yet?" Still a little dazed, she slowly got up and asked where they were. It wasn't just them. Dozens of people had been transported together. His answer came out dry. "We're inside Babel. Those were the chosen ones, awakened ones summoned by the tower itself. Some seemed ready for the challenge, but others cried, begging to go home." Yongxi took a look around and didn't like what she saw. The atmosphere there was heavy, almost suffocating. After a few seconds, she said what she was thinking. "Isn't there too few people? Shouldn't the great invocation gather hundreds of thousands? There aren't even 500 people here." Gonghik, with his usual calm, said that they were probably spread out in other sectors. She frowned, not understanding very well. He completed. "Babel is divided into sectors by floor. The higher you go, the fewer people there are." She gave a somewhat awkward smile and, changing the subject, asked what they should do from there. Gonghik replied that there would probably be an explanation soon, and looking ahead with seriousness, let out, "It's about to begin." Yongxi didn't answer immediately, still trying to process everything that was happening. It was then that a bang echoed through the place, making everyone turn around in fright. From the cloud of smoke that formed, an imposing, smiling figure emerged, with pointy horns and a charismatic air. The being opened its arms and declared with a firm voice, "Welcome to the Tower of Babel." The captivating smile contrasted with the sense of threat that hung in the air. "I am Kresti, a loyal servant of the Tyrant King." Surprise and confusion spread quickly among the summoned, something that Kresti seemed to notice and even find amusing. Floating above the crowd, he continued, "For all of you, insects who know nothing about this place, I will explain the rules of the first floor of the Tower of Babel." With a snap of his fingers, several system screens materialized in front of each person, projecting a points rank, and he began to reveal the first rule. Each human will be ranked according to their performance in hunting. After 3 weeks of the 200 people here, any human who is not in the top 50 in the ranking will be killed by me. Cruesty's eyes shone with a mix of desire and a pure will to impose his presence. Even so, not everyone there swallowed his words silently. One of the hunters took a step forward, pointed his finger, and shouted, outraged, "Don't mess with us! Who's going to kill who? There are a bunch of hunters here!" Christy didn't even deign to argue with a simple human. Instead, he decided to give a quick and cruel demonstration of power. He raised his hand, which began to pulse with a purple glow loaded with energy, as if lightning bolts were accumulating in his palm. With a simple snap, it was all over. The man was obliterated before he even finished his sentence, reduced to something empty, lifeless. The shock spread like wildfire. Screams echoed from all sides as some instinctively retreated. The air became heavy, suffocating, but not even that made Gonghik lower his gaze. He maintained a serious expression, his gaze heavy, staring back without wavering. He knew very well who was in front of him, the strongest of the 4 heavenly kings, second in command of the Tyrant King's army. It had been a long time since they had last seen each other. Cruesty noticed, and with a smile that mixed provocation and satisfaction, returned his gaze. The man's body fell apart into small purple coins that clinked as they fell to the ground. A hunter, curious, picked one up and frowned. "This is a coin?" Beside him, a woman approached, surprised, wanting to confirm if it was true. The commotion caught everyone's attention, and Christy took the opportunity to announce the second rule. His voice echoed like a decree. When a human dies on the first floor of the Tower of Babel, he drops 20% of the coins he has acquired up to that moment. The news was like throwing meat to hungry wolves. Suddenly, several people crowded around the body, fighting over the fallen coins like vultures over carrion. The young man who had picked up the first coin tried to get more, but was interrupted when a foot was firmly planted on his hand. He looked up and saw a bald man with a huge scar on his face holding a dagger. 20%, huh? You have coins, don't you? The greed in his eyes spoke louder than any mission. Cresty, watching the scene, seemed satisfied with how things were going. Even so, he asked for everyone's attention to announce the third rule. During the first 2 weeks, it is forbidden to kill other humans within the village area. The guy let out a sigh of relief, but the bald man just narrowed his eyes and clicked his tongue, frustrated. Cresty's voice returned, firm. "If you don't want to be killed by your comrades, you'd better get stronger in these 2 weeks." The crowd didn't pay much attention. They continued pushing and fighting over the fallen coins, as if the value of life had already dissolved. Cruesty just smiled, satisfied, upon realizing that the humans themselves seemed happier with the death of their companions than with the chance to survive. Suddenly, Cruesty let an intense purple glow begin to envelop his hands. A satisfied smile opened on his face as he said, "I'm going to do a special favor for all of you." His gaze turned directly to Gonghik. "I'm going to tear apart the one with the most coins." Youngsi understood instantly who the target would be and despaired. "Stop! Don't do that!" But Cruesty just snapped his fingers, releasing a beam of dark energy that went straight for our protagonist. Gonghik didn't move, facing the scene with confidence, but before he could react, a bang from the sky intercepted the attack, raising a dense cloud of dust and debris. Youngsi ran to him. "Are you okay?" Gonghik kept his eyes fixed upwards, analyzing. "What the hell was that?" She also looked up, seeing the smoke dissipate. From there, an imposing angel emerged who declared with a powerful voice, "Rule number 4. Demons and angels cannot harm humans or force them to act. Do your job right, Cresty." The dark being looked away, visibly annoyed, almost spitting with anger. He scratched his head and grumbled, "Just when things were getting interesting, I was going to make an announcement without permission." He turned to face the crowd again, his eyes glowing with a threatening charm and a sharp smile. "Well, that ends the tedious explanations." Then, side by side, the two, angel and demon, announced the last rule. Both would give humans different quests and missions, and each could choose which side to be on. But there was a reminder. If they wanted to live, they would have to fight with all their might. The stronger they became, the more this dimension would awaken, and the more power they would gain. With a snap of his fingers, Cruesty disappeared, leaving only one phrase in the air, "Do your best." People were still scared when Azazel invoked a light on herself, drawing attention. A hunter, carrying the lifeless body of a friend, approached with a choked voice. "Please, can't you bring our companions back to life?" The answer was clear. No one could. But the simple fact that she was there made several people approach, bombarding her with questions about the distribution of monsters, the location of the dungeons, how to get food and clean water. The voices overlapped, and Azazel asked for calm, trying to answer one at a time. Meanwhile, Gonghik was not among them. On the contrary, he was already walking away, turning his back on the confusion. "Youngsi, let's go." She ran to him, confused. "Don't you want any information?" He replied with his usual calm. "You heard the rules earlier, didn't you? All we can get from her are missions, anyway." Without looking back, he continued walking, and she just followed him in silence. They advanced through the first floor of the Tower of Babel until they found a garrison of goblins from the Red Star tribe. It was enough for them to be seen for the small green beings with pointy ears to start shouting, "Invaders! Everyone in your positions! It's a human!" The running began, but it was too late. One of the creatures already lay on the ground, eliminated in a single blow, proof that Gonghik was not there to play. With the baseball bat resting on his back, he walked with confidence, boasting about his accurate aim. An insane smile appeared on his face, as if nothing else mattered. "Hey, you guys there, can you just die in silence for me? I want to rack up points quickly." The goblins growled, arming themselves to counterattack, and a scream echoed, "Kill him!" Gonghik kept his guard up, thinking them foolish for believing they could face him. With a predatory smile, he began to crush them one by one, throwing bodies away with the weight of the bat. Then an arrow cut through the air, almost hitting him. He dodged with skill, only to be forced to jump backward when a second arrow came in a row. "So there's a crossbow archer? Oh, what a pain," he grumbled, facing the shooter. The archer, surprised, wondered if he was facing a monster, as no human should have reflexes like that. Before he could react, Yongsi appeared and hit him with a precise blow to the head with a frying pan, eliciting a roar of pain. "I've taken care of things here," she shouted, raising the improvised weapon. Gonghik relaxed a little and refocused on the enemies ahead. A short time later, all the goblins were dead. He looked at the bat, now all dented and with no durability. He clicked his tongue and threw it aside, analyzing the damage. For a worm, you tried a cheeky trick. It would have been better to just die. Yongzi watched him for a few seconds, intrigued, and then commented, "It's a little late to say this, but man, you're strong." He showed no reaction, his expression closing and just ordering, "Let's go, hurry up, get the items quickly." While checking his status, he heard his partner ask the reason for the rush. He explained bluntly, "There are 7 dungeons on the first floor of the Tower of Babel. 3 are main, Great Temple of Thoth, Sewer Dungeon, and Gate of Hell Labyrinth. But in particular, the Sewer Dungeon has a secret room, Pezaron's Cradle. This place is important. We have to get there before the others." The instant he looked back at Yongsi, he found something unexpected, a cheeky look, and the tip of a crossbow pointed at him. Without hesitation, she pressed the weapon against his back, doubting who he really was and what he had done to her companion. Gonghik just stared at her with an intense look full of something she couldn't decipher. "Ever since the Minotaur's dungeon, there's been something that doesn't sit right with me." Yongsi held her gaze steady, but her voice carried distrust. "My brother has always been a coward, a scaredy cat, but even so, he was kind and good-natured." She remembered the expressions he had been making now, cold, almost cruel, as if he knew everything before it happened. This only reinforced her certainty. "You are not my brother. Who are you, after all?" Silence took over. Gonghik kept his hands raised, not rushing to answer. After a few seconds, he broke the tension. "Do you remember the orphanage? Whenever we took a group photo, you insisted on standing next to me. It annoyed the teachers, remember? Because of that, I was bullied a lot by Chano, that kid who was jealous." Yongsi frowned, incredulous. "Don't give me that. If it were true, you wouldn't have changed so much." He looked away and said more seriously, "I saw the future, 20 years ahead. That thing in the Minotaur's dungeon was probably caused by the Observer, a future where I was summoned to Babel and worn down over time. I lived through that, even if indirectly. My personality change probably came from that." Yongsi's eyes widened, surprised by the ability. "The first scene I saw was you being killed by the Minotaur," he said, looking at her directly. "And the real reason I saw the future was to protect you at all costs." The words shook her convictions, even bringing a strange warmth to her chest. Then he delivered the final blow. "I promised I would always protect you, didn't I?" Hesitation took over her. On an impulse, she dropped her weapon and threw herself against him, wrapping him in a tight hug. "I'm sorry for doubting you," she murmured, her voice choked with emotion. While she gave in to that moment, Gonghik ran a hand through her hair and thought to himself, "Her intuition is too sharp. I'll have to come up with another excuse in the next regression." 2 days passed, and we were now inside the sewer dungeon. The smell was horrible, and the sound of squealing echoed everywhere. Several rat-like creatures, armed with sharp knives, came forward to attack us. It was useless. Before they could get close, a rain of arrows fell on them, taking down several at once. "Ugh, how disgusting," Yongsi complained, making a face as she saw one of the rats, agonizing on the floor. On the other side, Gonghik finished off another creature with a dry, precise blow. When he finished, he commented, "It must be around here somewhere." Immediately after, he summoned his avatar and activated the Mind's Eye ability. An eye opened on his forehead, shining intensely, and like a lightning bolt pointed in a specific direction. "Oh, so it was here," he said, stopping in front of a huge statue. Gonghik inserted some coins, and the system appeared before him. "Use 3 C coins to open the cradle? Yes or no?" Without hesitation, he clicked yes. The sound of stone cracking echoed as the statue opened in half, revealing the passage. They crossed and entered an oval room illuminated by a soft glow. In the center, there was a stone plaque that emitted a golden light. Yongxi smiled, almost surprised. "Maybe it's because I'm with you, but these things don't impress me anymore." Gonghik sighed and put his hand on the plaque. "This might surprise you a little." The stone shone brightly and the system announced, "User, Chu Guanyo, Level 1, Authority confirmed, Shop open." Suddenly, holograms appeared around, displaying several options: avatars, equipment, and rare books. Among them, Avatar Zephyrus, S+, for 5 green coins, Avatar Thor, SS, for 3 yellow coins, Skill Book, SS, the Book of the 7 Heroes of the Pezzeron Continent for 1 yellow coin, and even the Noble Phantom, SS Morglay, for 20 blue coins. Yongxi looked impressed. "But what is all this?" With a confident tone, he replied, "The Cradle of Pezzeron, a secret room that turns hunters into heroes, although it's only accessible to those with a lot of money." In front of them, there was a trading machine that displayed a very flashy panel, 1,500 purple coins for 6 C coins. Gonghik began to analyze the offer, making the necessary trades calmly, while Yongxi, next to him, seemed completely fixated on something. On the screen in front of her, a recommended avatar appeared: Yue Zhou, Level C+, for only 5 C coins. Her eyes lit up, and without a second thought, she asked, "If I buy this, does that mean I'll have 2 avatars?" He immediately confirmed, "No, for now there's only 1 space for an avatar." With a quick gesture, he showed her the interface where both of them only had 1 slot. "First, you have to increase the available spaces." She looked at him, a little curious, wanting to know exactly how she could do that. Gonghik, noticing her interest in the avatar, was direct. "Don't buy that. What you have now is much better than that trash." Yongxi made a disappointed face, like a child who had candy taken from their hand. The next moment, Gonghik shouted excitedly, "Found it!" Right in front of him was an E-level evolution stone, costing only 10 C coins. Without a second thought, he bought it, declaring with a confident smile, "Time to evolve my avatar." Thus, a new stage for the observer was unlocked. The avatar began to float, rising up close to the ceiling, while an intense blue aura emanated from its body, and another eye opened in the center. The new ability received was Farseer, one who sees far in the distance. In the interface, several other abilities appeared side by side, Debugger, Panopticon, but the one that really caught Gonghik's attention was marked with a question mark. "Game Master?" he murmured, recognizing the name as if he were meeting an old friend again, his partner of centuries. The system began to process the evolution, tracing the route to the final form. When it was finished, expansion authority had been granted. The avatar now wore a hat with a large red eye in the center and a new name shown on the screen, GM, Cap 09. Inside the deepest floor of the sewer dungeon was the final boss, King Lotus, an imposing creature with the appearance of a rat humanoid, sitting on his throne. He wore an eye patch and sported long, sharp claws. Behind him, a translucent shadow seemed to smile with satisfaction, as if celebrating the arrival of a challenger. As the door creaked open, Lotus's eyes narrowed. 2 hunters entered the hall. Our protagonist was holding a huge hammer, while Yongxi was pointing her crossbow, ready to fire. The shadow looked at them, and in an almost disappointed tone said, "Huh? Just the 2 of you?" There was no time for anything else. Gonghik's hammer came down violently, hitting the shadow's head before it could even react. With a smile of pure challenge, he provoked, "Don't just stand there daydreaming. Come on, attack me already, you damn rat!" Lotus stared at him with an almost palpable fury, snarling loudly as he pushed the weapon away. In his claws, a small sphere of purple energy began to pulse, growing like a poison ready to be launched. Gonghik didn't back down. On the contrary, he advanced and hit another blow, the impact echoing through the walls like thunder. "You really think you can defeat me?" he said confidently. Lotus replied with a roar and pulled out an iron whip from his belt, which began to spin and snap between the floor and ceiling, making the air vibrate. He knew, even blocking, this is going to hurt. On the other side, Gonghik tightened his fist on the hammer handle, forcing himself to maintain total focus. The whip snaked like a snake, trying to hit him from all angles, but he dodged with surgical precision, avoiding by centimeters. He advanced at the perfect time, finding an opening to hit another accurate blow. The translucent shadow watched with its arms crossed, its eyes fixed on him. Good dodges, good movements," it murmured, but soon added, in a cold tone filled with contempt, but this isn't even close to being enough to face me. Suddenly, Ladis pulled a kind of bomb from his belt, decorated with a skull on the front. Without hesitation, he threw it on the floor, releasing a dense smoke that spread quickly throughout the hall. The air became heavy and the smell suffocating. That was pure poison. Youngsi instinctively covered her face to avoid breathing the gas, but the smoke obstructed her vision. Gonghik also began to feel the effect, his vision blurring, but he maintained focus, knowing that the enemy could attack at any moment. And it didn't take long. A snap cut through the air, and Lattice's whip came with full force, hitting the protagonist head-on. The impact was brutal, splattering blood instantly. But the worst part was the poison impregnated in the blow, which began to spread through his body, slowly draining his HP and reducing his agility by almost 30%. Lattice was sure that this would be the end. Gonghik, however, thought differently. Holding his bloody chest, he snarled, "A mere rat, thinking so much of himself." Turning to his partner, he ordered, "Youngsi, now!" In addition to having healing abilities, she also mastered techniques to deal with poison. In an instant, she summoned her priestess avatar, who appeared as a protective shadow behind her. The priestess's hands rose, and luminous petals began to fall, releasing a soft fragrance. The detoxification flowers attached themselves to Gonghik's shoulder, neutralizing the poison in seconds. Feeling his body react, he rested the hammer on his shoulder and gave Lattice a fierce look. "Now, come on," he provoked. The translucent shadow raised its eyebrows, surprised by the quick recovery. Youngsi already had her crossbow pointed at the target, but the moment Lattice turned to face her, Gonghik took advantage of the opening. He advanced quickly and delivered an accurate kick, making the boss recoil and fall on his back. Without giving him any space, the protagonist stepped on the enemy's face. Looking away? "Pretty confident, huh?" he said with contempt. He raised the hammer as high as he could and shouted, "Don't underestimate me." The blow fell with full force, activating his single strike ability, crushing the opponent with an impact that made the ground tremble. The system screens appeared in front, displaying victory notifications. The translucent shadow, still watching, commented, "To think you two actually managed it. It's been a long time since I've seen something so interesting, but at this level, you won't be able to clear Babel." Gonghik ignored the tone of provocation and, without wasting time, summoned his avatar again, activating the Mind's Eye ability. A red ray crossed the hall, marking the exact location where the real boss, the king of the great sewers, Shamandi, was hidden. The shadow's eyes widened, surprised. "Hey, don't tell me that. You can see me?" Its voice trembled, and it swallowed hard. Approximately 400 years ago, Payzeron was a peaceful world. No wars, no chaos, until suddenly, dungeons began to appear out of nowhere. With them came the invasion of monsters, and as a consequence, the birth of hunters. Among them, King Lattice and 6 other legendary heroes decided to climb Babel to protect their world. But the tower was too strong, and most were massacred. In the end, Payzeron could not resist and ended up being completely absorbed by Babel. The translucent shadow stood with its arms crossed in front of the 2 hunters, narrating this whole story as if it were a scar that never healed. Youngsi, confused, couldn't help but ask, "Absorbed? What do you mean?" The spirit calmly explained that the King Ladis they had just defeated was not the real one. It was just a creation based on his own image. And the worst part, the people of Payzeron, just like him, were transformed into raw material to create monsters. With visible sorrow in his voice, he revealed, "Our world was shattered and subjugated by Babel, converted into dungeons. Even after 400 years, Babel hadn't stopped. It kept invading dimensions and worlds, absorbing everything it found and growing more and more." Youngsi, paying attention, began to understand the weight of that. If they lost Earth, it would also be swallowed by Babel, exactly as happened with Payzeron. As for Gonghik, he was yawning, clearly bored with the long explanation. Without the patience to listen any further, he approached, clapped his hands, and said, Okay, I get it. Enough with the whining." The protagonist held out his hands in front of him, and in an instant, a white coin appeared there. He had just gotten close to one of Babel's secrets, and as a reward, he earned that rare coin along with the title, "The First to Know the Dungeon's Secret." Youngsi frowned, not understanding anything, and asked what it was for. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he summoned his already evolved avatar and, spinning the coin between his fingers, commented with a slight smile, "This here? It's for opening one more avatar space." GM took the coin, activated the authority expansion ability, and then unlocked a new slot. Youngsi, excited, smiled and said with energy, "Then let's go. There's nothing else for us to do here." Before they left, Shamandi called them. In a serious tone, he revealed that, in 400 years, they were the first to see him in person. Then, he bowed slightly, offering his own strength should they want to fight until the end against Babel. He was not just anyone, he was a king of the great sewers, A+ classification. Youngsi was speechless and turned to the protagonist, almost jumping with excitement. Do you realize? We can get a free A+ avatar. That's incredible. But he, unimpressed, waved his hand and replied bluntly, I'll pass. We don't need a low-level avatar. Her expression immediately wilted. Even though he was like that, she still wanted to accept. Shamandi also didn't react well. Frustrated and offended, he shouted, Insolent! I reached the 50th floor of Babel! The protagonist, however, just turned, waving goodbye, and giving him the middle finger. Shamandi stayed there cursing nonstop as they left. Cap 10 4 days had passed since the 7th great summoning of Babel. The movement on the first floor in the village area was intense. A huge group surrounded the angel responsible for them, all wanting answers or advantages. Among the crowd, Youngsi was there, almost unnoticed under a black cape and with her hood covering her face. With firm steps, she approached Azazel and said with a determined look, Excuse me, I want to register for the ranking. The angel just asked for her name, but she, a little embarrassed, asked for it to be done anonymously. Azazel was amused by the mystery, but accepted. Then he confirmed, registration complete. In the system, a ranking board appeared. First place had 1830 points, name Jackson. Second place appeared covered by question marks with 1770 points. Huh? Second place? Youngsi was dumbfounded. Automatically, a ranked blessing was granted, plus 5% to all attributes, plus 110% status effect resistance, and plus 110% recovery bonus. Around them, everyone was shocked by someone suddenly appearing so high in the ranking. Some began to approach, asking if she was the mysterious person, claiming they had never seen her in any attack squad. Soon, they were surrounding Youngsi, insisting that she take off her hood and reveal her face. She was getting dizzy with so much pressure. This way, it was no use for me to register. Anonymously, as my brother asked, What do I do? From above, the protagonist watched the scene. Seeing Youngsi surrounded and pressured was starting to annoy him. He put his hand on his forehead, took a deep breath, and, without any more patience, called his avatar GM. Hidden among bushes, he spoke in a firm tone, Connect to the first floor of Babel. Register my score in the ranking. GM held out its hand, and like a spreading web of energy, informed, Ranking information update complete. In the sky, everyone suddenly received an alert message. Soon after, the system's voice echoed, Alert. Ranking information updated via an abnormal route. People looked at each other, not understanding anything, while numbers went up like crazy on the screen, as if someone from a low rank had started climbing non-stop. In a few seconds, first place was taken by a mysterious name, X 13210 points. At that moment, everyone who had been focused on Youngsi turned to the panel, dumbfounded. Is that even possible? Even combining from 2nd to 10th place doesn't come close to that. The name is X? Who is this? Taking advantage of the distraction, Youngsi left, her heart pounding and her face sweating cold. One of the hunters went to Azazel and asked suspiciously, This score, isn't it some kind of error? The angel replied calmly, There's no problem with the score. It seems they tampered with the registration route, but what's really unusual is the person who managed this. Hidden among the bushes, the protagonist cracked a satisfied smile, watching the confusion. Meanwhile, Youngsi followed the side corridor of the village, trying to blend in with the crowd. On the way, she saw a man fallen on the floor, injured and breathing with difficulty. She approached quickly, knelt beside him and asked, What happened to you? The man, with the little strength he had, murmured, Don't worry about me. It's already too late for me. Youngsi bit her lip, determined not to accept that. Then she raised her hand, beginning to conjure Priestess Avatar. But, at that same instant, the protagonist's voice echoed in her mind. Don't summon your avatar where people can see. Before she could react, a male voice sounded right behind her. Hey, little lady, didn't you hear what he said? A bald man with a huge scar over his eye grabbed her from behind with force. He repeated, almost snarling, the same words the fallen man had said. He said to leave you alone. Youngsi bent slightly, relieved to have found someone there. She pointed to the fallen man, and without imagining what was to come, asked, Could you please take care of this person? I'm in a bit of a hurry. The bald man raised an eyebrow, pointing to himself, as if he couldn't believe what he had heard. Then he laughed mockingly and replied, Yes, I'll take very good care of him. Without wasting time, he delivered a brutal kick to the fallen man's face, making blood flow. The small audience around began to whisper, That's Igor, that scoundrel. I heard he fell to 6th place in the ranking. It's not worth getting involved with him. Let's get out of here. Youngsi continued to stare without blinking, following the scene without taking her eyes off him. Igor increased the pressure, stepping with even more force on the man's head and pushing him against the floor. You don't understand. This guy is practically dead already. A cruel smile appeared on his face. Weren't you in a hurry? Then then get out of here. I'm going to enjoy his coins very much. Youngsi, however, didn't move. Her gaze was cold, determined, and something in her expression indicated that she wasn't going to let that slide. Suddenly, an invisible force knocked him down, making him fall face first to the ground. Psychokinesis. Igor, snarling with anger, shouted, "What do you think you're doing?" Youngsi knelt down next to the injured man and handed him a rice ball that emanated a soft glow. "Here, take this." Igor tried to move his body, but it was heavier than lead. He grumbled and cursed nonstop. Youngsi then stood up, looking at him firmly. "It's useless to resist. It's a rank D ability that I just got. Why don't you try to live a more decent life? A high ranking is nothing special." The bald man gnashed his teeth and shouted, demanding to know her name. But Youngsi just turned her back and started to walk away. "You bitch! Wait! I'm going to hunt you down and kill you!" he bellowed, immobile. Meanwhile, the green-haired man held the rice ball carefully. Maybe the world wasn't so bad after all. In the hunting ground, still on the first floor of the tower, was Igor's hideout. He entered, kicking the door and shouting, "Get ready, Jacob! We're going to hunt that woman! I'm going to put her in her place!" The interior was full of swords, spears, and trinkets, but there was no sign of anyone. Still fuming, Igor grumbled about the damn telekinesis user and asked loudly if Jacob knew any Oriental woman. He went to the inner door and, already irritated, shouted for his friend to answer quickly. When he opened it, he came face to face with Jacob sprawled on the floor, dead. His teeth clenched and his hatred boiled. "If they attacked this place, then I'm the target? Damn it! Who did this?" A little ways away, our protagonist watched everything through a hologram. Igor's desperate expression was like music to him. A sadistic smile slowly spread across his face, savoring every second of that. Scene, Cap 11. Igor analyzed every detail of the brutal scene in front of him. Jacob's shoulder, stomach, and leg were destroyed, and he couldn't contain his anger. Damn it! How many weapons does this guy have anyway? Scratching his bald head, he began to suspect that it wasn't the work of just one person. But before he could think anymore, several voices from outside caught his attention. A group was approaching the location. "Don't tell me we're lost," a man carrying a huge hammer grumbled. Answer came in a carefree tone. "Who cares? If there are monsters, we kill them and take the coins." The group stopped when they noticed a strange house. "Hey, isn't that ranked guy's hideout? I think his name was Igor?" Hearing his name, Igor narrowed his eyes and paid attention. One of the members warned them to be careful and not to provoke the owner of that place to avoid problems, but the advice didn't help. In an instant, Igor appeared behind the woman of the group, pressing a dagger against her neck. With his nerves on edge, he didn't even bother to ask anything. He just assumed they were the culprits, since they were carrying a hammer, sword, axe, and spear. "So it was you, you wretches! You had the courage to attack my hideout like this!" And without a second thought, he slit the young woman's throat. She didn't even have a chance to react. She just put her hand to the wound, choking, before falling lifeless to the floor. The group went into shock, shouting her name, not believing what had just happened. "This guy has completely lost his mind," one of the men said, raising his hammer and swearing revenge. On the other side, our protagonist watched everything through a hologram, while Igor bellowed, "You low-level worms have no idea who you're messing with." Gonghik, with a bored expression, rested his hand on his head and commented to himself, "One day he'll get the Ripper avatar and become the biggest threat, but he's still an idiot." Beside him, all the weapons used were thrown on the ground, still stained with blood. We're only on the 4th day since Babel started. The power difference between hunters isn't that big yet. Even if he's in 6th place, there's no way he can beat 4 at once. Calmly, he lit a cigarette, curious to see how the fight would end. The 4 hunters advanced against Igor, and Gonghik wondered how the rest of the hunters would react if the news that a ranked player was defeated by low-level people spread. A few days passed until we ended up at the Great Temple of Thoth. Youngsi walked through the dungeon corridors, breaking the silence with a casual comment. "Remember that damned ranked guy I mentioned? Well, he died. It seems a low-level hunter finished him off." Our protagonist listened to her as if he didn't know anything, maintaining a neutral expression, but she continued, "This just proves that we need to live an honest life." Gonghik turned to face her, raising an eyebrow. "Was that a hint at me or what?" The girl just laughed a little awkwardly. "Anyway, because of that, the low-level hunters are acting more intensely than normal. The memory was inevitable. Right at the beginning of the summoning, the demon had said that everyone below rank 50 would die. As a consequence, these hunters decided to team up and hunt ranked players. Hearing this, Gonghik smiled, making Youngsi suspicious. Don't tell me. You already knew this was going to happen? Was that why you told me to register anonymously? The conversation was cut short when they arrived at their destination. In front, an imposing door guarded the temple boss's room. Gong-hik turned to her and warned, "As I said before, I won't be able to give you cover in this fight. You'll have to manage on your own." Youngsi just nodded, determined. "Okay, I can do it." Our protagonist grabbed the ritual spear with the poisoned blade and pushed the door firmly. On the other side was the temple guardian, a creature with the appearance of Anubis, who greeted them with a grave voice. "Intruder, how dare you profane the great Rajahuti?" Gong-hik didn't waste time. He activated his ability, throwing a knife bathed in poison. The blow hit the guardian full on, making it grunt. "Insolent human!" Coldly, the enemy pulled the weapon from his chest as if it were nothing. Gong-hik knew he was facing the most resistant boss on the first floor of Babel, and that he would need everything he had to defeat him. Raising his hand, the protagonist made poisonous thorns emerge from the floor, forming fatal traps. The guardian roared, leaping in his direction. "Miserable! I'm going to rip your life out!" But Gong-hik remained calm, pulling a highly toxic tear gas grenade from his inventory. He threw it forward, raising a thick curtain of poisonous dust. The creature staggered, trying to stay on its feet. "Pathetic tricks," it murmured with contempt, even weakened. The system announced the retrieval of King Lattice's iron whip, loaded with a lethal poison. Gong-hik spun the weapon through the air with dexterity, and in a quick blow hit the guardian's arm, impregnating it with Lattice's toxin. A confident smile appeared on his face as he provoked, "I learned this from a rat. Pretty useful, isn't it? How does it feel to feel the effect of 4 poisons at the same time? Are you a little dizzy, or were you already dizzy from the start?" The guardian let out a furious roar and went to attack, but Gong-hik dodged with agility, escaping every blow as if he were having fun. "Shut up," the exasperated guardian shouted. Gong-hik, however, didn't stop taunting. "Hey doggy, it's walkie's time." Without wasting time, he ran through the corridors of the room, forcing the enemy to chase him. The chase was exactly what he wanted. Each step of the guardian made the poison circulate faster in his body, weakening him little by little. The sound of claws scratching the floor echoed, but Gong-hik maintained the rhythm until something caught his attention. The jackal had changed direction and was now advancing to the rear, where Youngsi was. Gong-hik's eyes widened for a second before he sped back, intercepting the attack. He launched himself head-on against the guardian, but the blow was blocked with force. Face to face, the enemy stared at him with contempt. "Fool, advancing and abandoning your ally?" Gong-hik just maintained his cold smile and replied without averting his gaze, "It's fine. I had already warned her before. I just need to focus on finishing you off." The great temple of Thoth's chief's chamber was lit by several torches that cast dancing shadows on the walls, while the threatening growls of several jackals echoed down the corridors as they advanced toward Youngsi. She kept her stance firm, firing accurate bolts from her crossbow to stop each approaching enemy. 2 jackals suddenly appeared behind her, putting her on alert, but before they could strike, a blue aura enveloped them, her telekinesis ability. The creatures were thrown against each other, hitting repeatedly until they fell. In her mind, Gong-hik's warning echoed, "I can't protect you in this battle against the chief. Can you handle it alone?" Youngsi knew her role was essential, to draw the jackal's attention and keep the field clear so Gong-hik could have a direct duel with the guardian. She ran through the corridors, creating escape routes and dodging attacks, avoiding being cornered at all costs. If she kept up the pace, she believed he would have the perfect chance to defeat the chief. Meanwhile, in the center of the room, Gong-hik faced the guardian with an impassive gaze. The enemy growled, teeth clenched in anger, then raised the golden scepter, spinning it forcefully. At that moment, Youngsi noticed a strange change. The jackals began altering their routes, advancing in a coordinated manner to surround her. A faster group opened their jaws full of sharp fangs, closing the distance and reaching her. Surprised and frightened, Youngsi let out a scream that echoed through the room, immediately drawing Gong-hik's attention. The guardian, noticing the opening, sneered with contempt. "Fool, abandoning your companion to attack." But the protagonist just kept his cold smile, convinced she could handle it, and mentally replied that this was the perfect distraction for him to focus on taking down the guardian once and for all. That moment was crucial for Youngsi. All the creatures were around her, growling non-stop and closing in. Suddenly, a system screen appeared before her, bringing a message that made our protagonist smile. "There is a request to intervene. Do you accept?" Without hesitation, he confirmed. The instant one of the jackals lunged to bite her, Youngsi closed her eyes, ready for the worst. But it didn't take long before she opened them again, confused to still be alive. Before her, the man she had seen, fallen in the square, appeared to save her. The impact of his leap and strike was so intense that debris scattered everywhere. Youngsi, still on her knees, coughed, trying to recover from the shock. When she looked at him, she noticed his muscular build and asked who he was. Then he introduced himself. "My name is Soma Sengai. Thanks for the rice cake and the flowers." He extended his hand to help her up, and at that moment she remembered, "Ah, it's you, the one who fainted in the village." Before, they were still not safe. Another creature emerged from the shadows and lunged at them, making Youngsi shout for Sangai to be careful. Without hesitation, he summoned his avatar, Neo Guardian. A golden aura burst from his body as the ability Vajra Indestructibility was activated. The jackal bit into his shoulders, but Sangai stood firm and unharmed. Youngsi, frightened, asked if he was okay, but received no answer. Then Sangai summoned another avatar, Spartacus, releasing the ability Revolution, which struck all enemies in range. "Rest in peace, beyond the other shore," he declared without losing focus. One last jackal appeared from behind, ready to bite, but was stopped by a precise arrow. Youngsi, smiling, called to him, relieved that they had managed to help each other. Moments before, Gonghik watched their movements with a calculating look. "Soma Sangai, you helped us again this time." With them safe, his attention could now fully turn to the Guardian. The enemy advanced with a quick slash through the air, but Gonghik jumped back, dodging precisely. Phew, those dogs were really intimidating. The Guardian, intrigued, narrowed his eyes. "Are you predicting my attacks?" Gonghik replied with a slight smile. "Yes, I'm naturally good at quick movements." The Guardian's silence only confirmed the tension. None of his attacks landed while the poison was already spreading through his body. "At this rate, I will be defeated," he thought. Then, roaring with rage, he declared the game was over and that he would hunt down the damned human. He lowered onto all fours and charged with fierce speed. Gonghik, steady, wielded the giant tiger scimitar and declared, "Don't be mistaken. The prey here is you." The Guardian began circling Gonghik, studying him intently. "I don't know how you're doing this, but you're quickly understanding the patterns of my attacks. However, your reaction speed and burst power don't seem that great. In that case," before he could finish the sentence, he leapt forward at an absurd speed, hitting Gonghik's shoulder with force. Unable to believe what had just happened, our protagonist held the wound, turning to face him, but there was no time to react. Another attack came immediately. The Guardian was faster than before. His movements were almost invisible. "I just need to attack fast enough that understanding the pattern becomes useless," he said, spinning around his opponent like a predator toying with its prey. Gonghik felt the pain spreading, his body tensing with every blow received. At that moment, Sangai noticed something was wrong and called out to Youngsi. "Shouldn't we help in the fight against the chief too?" he asked, worried about the protagonist's condition. Youngsi, still taking down a jackal, hesitated for a moment before responding. "I was told to handle the jackals. They'll keep coming non-stop while the Guardian is alive. If we join now, we'll have to face not only the Guardian but also the jackals. That's why we need to keep fighting them until my brother defeats the chief." Both fought back to back, preventing the beasts from surrounding either of them. Sangai understood her logic, but still tried to argue, hinting that at this pace, Gonghik might fail. Then Youngsi spoke firmly. "Trust him, he will definitely defeat." On the other side of the room, the battle was at its peak. Gonghik barely noticed the almost imperceptible strikes. His eyes struggled to follow the enemy's trajectory. The Guardian, confident, roared, "How trivial! This is the end, insolent human!" Another swift attack was launched, but this time Gonghik raised a shield at the right moment, absorbing the impact. A smile broke across his face. As expected, the final blow comes from the front. He then equipped a new weapon, the iron rapier, holding it with precision. "It's true I can't keep up with your movements, but this speed you can't avoid either," he declared, ready for the counterattack. The sword was pointed forward, and the Guardian, unable to control his own speed any longer, charged directly into the blade, being pierced. Gonghik smiled, satisfied with the perfectly planned maneuver. On the ground, the Guardian choked on his own blood, groaning in agony. To end the fight once and for all, Gonghik raised his sword firmly and declared, "You will make a fine meal." Then, activating his single-cut ability, he surgically sliced the opponent in half. Thus, the dungeon's chief, the fearsome Temple Guardian, was defeated. Sangai watched the two before him, recalling Yongxi's words about how incredible skills and confidence managed to defeat the chief alone. Embarrassed, Yongxi ran over to introduce that unlikely ally, but the protagonist already knew who he was, Soma Sangai. It wasn't long before she asked, curious, "By the way, if you're so strong, why were you unconscious that time?" Scratching his head, Sangai replied it was a long story, but summarized by saying he had been tricked by Mr. Igor in the Kiunmo hunting grounds. Yongxi thought calling him Mr. was too kind, which made Sangai laugh heartily. Well, there's no use bad-mouthing the dead. The protagonist observed their interaction, reflecting, if Yongxi, with her multiple nullification and unique support abilities, was humanity's best healer, then Sangai, with his near-superhuman endurance, patience, and exceptional charisma, would be the strongest tank of all. In past regressions, he had endured to the brink of death to restrain the protagonist when he was out of control. Gonghik sighed deeply and thanked them for the help, extending his hand. "Want to come with me?" Sangai joined his hands in a gesture of respect and replied, "This invitation is the greatest honor for me." Half embarrassed, Gonghik tried to pull his hand back, thinking the other was exaggerating. Turning around, he decided it was time to focus on the reward. He summoned his GM avatar and requested to activate the Mind's Eye ability. They had captured the Oath and Time god, Ra Jefta, of SS level. Both Sangai and Yongxi were left speechless, but the protagonist only thought, "That's why I went so far to challenge the maximum difficulty dungeon." The creature, with long black wings, appeared atop a pillar and, staring at them, asked, "Oh, you found me. Who exactly are you?" Our protagonist placed his hand on his chest and declared with conviction, "I will take the Demon King's head. Lend me your strength." That imposing being murmured as if reflecting for a moment, but refused with the same conviction Gonghik showed. "I refuse. You killed innocent guardians. I have no intention of serving someone as arrogant as you." Gonghik smiled at the response. Still holding that pride after being absorbed by babble, Rajefta considered the remark extremely insolent and coldly replied, "The babble incident was beyond my control. The world cycle is a fate no one can defy. Besides, meditating here isn't so bad. Fools like you wouldn't understand." Gonghik kept a steady gaze and retorted loudly, "You try to keep up appearances, but in the end that's just the excuse of a loser, isn't it?" Rajefta was unwilling to hear such provocations and asked if that was the only reason the human had come. In truth, he only wanted to be left to rest in peace, but that was not Gonghik's intention. "What do you think the people still in Babel would say if they saw you now?" The question left the god silent for a few seconds, though he tried not to lose his composure. Finally, he answered, "My people are gone." Gonghik didn't hesitate. "No." Intrigued by the human's certainty, Rajefta waited. Gonghik, taking another drag from his cigarette, explained, "You only think everyone is dead because your connection to them disappeared. But that break is just a consequence of your loss of divinity. They are still alive in Babel, though living in pain." Interest sparked in the god, who asked if that was really true. Then, through the GM avatar, Gonghik decided to show the reality. The GM rose to the skies, activating its authority, expansion ability, and then projected a clear image of a place on the 48th floor of Babel. The scene was apocalyptic. Several pillars burned in flames, sending sparks and smoke into the heavy air. The sight left Rajefta incredulous. "It can't be," he exclaimed, his expression filled with shock. A colossal monster, resembling a titan, appeared above the walls and buildings. Outraged, Rajefta asked, "What creature is that? And why is it attacking my people?" Our protagonist, however, remained calm and replied, "Keep watching. You'll understand soon." The creature roared loudly, charging at the residents, but was intercepted by several people wearing white robes with golden details. A woman leading the attack shouted, "Damn it! Shoot more holy light!" Ulven, opening his huge mouth, bellowed, "Those filthy pests of Tot!" The warrior angrily retorted that this land belonged to Tot, loyal to Lord Rajefta, and no one would allow Ulven's race here. But the monster mocked them, calling them selfish scum of Tot, and declared that if they wouldn't leave willingly, he would take it by force. His giant fists struck the city, knocking down stones that fell over the panicked population. The warrior urged everyone not to give in to fear, raising her hand and vowing to punish the monster in Rajefta's. Ulven's hand fell violently on her. "Rajefta doesn't exist! He abandoned us! He's nothing but a false god!" he roared, crushing her mercilessly with a mad smile. The pleasure of destruction was written on his face. Suddenly, a golden flash hit his face, making him stagger backward. Below, soldiers smiled. "Got him! Good! Now's our chance!" They raised their scepters and fired beams of holy light, striking him in succession. Ulven crossed his arms to protect his face, but the fury in his eyes was even more wicked. With a powerful roar, he ordered, Kill every one of them! The vision ended, leaving Rajefta speechless. Gonghik took advantage of the moment, exhaling cigarette smoke. How tragic. Is this the fate of a people who lost their god? And yet, they haven't forgotten his name? They must have been calling for you for centuries. Meanwhile, the great Rajefta sat cross-legged, meditating. Wasn't that what you said? Rajefta spun around, grabbing Gonghik's collar tightly. Shut up, he ordered, approaching with golden, glowing eyes. Say that again and I'll tear your head off. Tension settled between them. The god continued. This is the first floor of Babel. How do you know what happens on the 48th? Don't tell me. Those images were forged. Smiling, Gonghik questioned, do you really want to live in denial that much? And added, those people, their god is you. You know, with a simple look, whether it's false or not, don't you? Rajefta remained silent for a few seconds. Gonghik dropped the cigarette on the ground, crushing it with his foot. If you really want to enjoy your retirement in peace, then say no more. But there are still people up there, waiting for you. He raised his hand, inviting, if you don't want to just stay here watching your creations suffer, then come with me. I will kill the Demon King and free you and your people from Babel. Rajefta shook his head, murmuring, you're an annoying human. But in the end, he shook Gonghik's hand, conceding, now that I know the truth, I can't just stand here doing nothing. The system announced the notification. The avatar had been acquired. Curious, Sangai let out a heavy breath and asked, still in disbelief, who is Gonghik? After all, the corridor on the 5th basement level in the Hellgate Labyrinth was lit only by small flames. Inside, an intense battle was raging between hunters and the creatures of the Tower of Babel. A monster, resembling an avatar clad in golden armor, raised its hand to deliver a devastating punch at the hunters. Some retreated, fearing for their lives, when suddenly the skill Single Slash was activated. Like a golden flash, our protagonist landed in the spot, slicing the creature in half. The metallic sound echoed as the body fell to the ground. Gonghik looked around and asked, are you okay? Silence was immediate, broken only by the sound of heavy breaths. A man grinding his teeth finally spoke. Who are you? Gonghik answered simply, just a passing hunter. The cold tone made the man frown, interpreting it as if he were a ranked killer. Before he could say more, a woman with red hair braided into a bun slapped his back and intervened. Hey, that's not how you talk to someone who just saved your life. She approached Gonghik and with a sigh of relief thanked him. Phew, one wrong move and we would have been wiped out. We came here as a raid group to clear this boss. Believe it or not, everyone here is ranked in the top 50. Gonghik showed no interest in the titles, but focused on a phrase that caught his attention. Ranked killer. Noticing his doubt, the redhead explained, it seems they're hunting top 50 ranked players. It's become a trend, especially now. That demon said, remember, when the deadline ends, everyone outside the ranking will die. Without the confidence to level up facing monsters, low-level hunters are hunting ranked players outside the village to gain position. This started after Igor was taken down. Gonghik remained silent for a few seconds, leaning against the wall, satisfied to see things going as he had predicted. The redhead then asked about his companions. Upon hearing he was alone in the dungeon, her eyes lit up. In that case, if you don't mind, want to team up? He shook her hand in agreement. He wouldn't refuse. Due to group mechanics, the dungeon boss would be hard to face alone. The young woman celebrated the partnership, but the other hunters exchanged strange looks. Gonghik didn't know if it was anger, distrust, or if they were simply waiting for a possible trap. The place was hot, with rivers of lava flowing everywhere. The dungeon boss, a two-headed hellhound, growled and charged, snorting in fury. It opened its jaws and unleashed a fiery breath at Gonghik, who dodged calmly. Holding a scepter, the protagonist counterattacked, activating the unique fatal strike. The powerful attack knocked the dog to the ground. Actually, I'm specializing in killing your kind. Just a little while ago, I killed a friend of yours much fiercer than you, Gonghik said, with a smile while concentrating energy to activate his throwing skill. The weapon flew with impressive speed, hitting the creature instantly. Gonghik mocked, proud of the ease in defeating enemies like that, and equipped a giant flame spear. His movements were so fast it was impossible to follow the weapon's dance on the battlefield. Those watching from outside were stunned. Who is this guy? Murmured one hunter, while another, sweating cold, began to recall a name. He's X. The group recognized the nickname of the person who, in the last ranking update, had earned over 10,000 points. Seeing the fight, they understood why. Gonghik was probably clearing dungeons alone all the time. A hunter approached the red-haired woman and asked what they should do since even for them, fighting that monster would be the limit. She thought for a few seconds and then replied, no. Even if it's 10,000 points or 100,000, he still can't prevent a surprise attack. Besides, if that score is real, he must be loaded with coins. If we kill him, it's the ultimate prize. Gonghik had just landed, and turning to the redhead, commented that she talked too much during battles. Embarrassed, she replied it was nothing and asked, More importantly, when does the group mechanic activate? He answered calmly, now. At the same moment, the woman jumped at high speed toward him. At the same time, the Hellhound activated its skill, Flames of Damnation, causing continuous damage divided among all enemies present. The entire field was filled with screams and groans of pain, due to the overwhelming pressure of the attack. Panting and trembling, the woman asked if that was really a group mechanic, and Gonghik, without showing any distress, replied with a calm smile, yes, that's why I didn't bring my companions. One of the soldiers, kneeling and partially burned, roared in anger upon realizing Gonghik had planned to use them as shields from the start. The protagonist, however, showed no remorse. He coldly argued it was their own fault, as they hadn't even equipped fire resistance, while he had an absurd resistance of 582%. Then Gonghik lowered his gaze and revealed another reason for not bringing his companions. I don't want them to see what I'm going to do. His voice carried a sadistic weight that made the air feel heavier. Without hesitation, he made a clean cut on the fallen ally, eliciting a scream of horror from the red-haired woman, who panicked seeing her companion eliminated. Hey, what are you doing? She exclaimed, shocked. But when she turned to look around, she witnessed a massacre. Gonghik's axe spun in lethal movements, and each blow painted the infernal scenery red. While reaping lives, he replied coldly, I'm doing the same thing you were going to do to me. Remember what happened that time? The redhead, stunned, stepped back a few paces, confused. What are you talking about? Gonghik, however, continued with the same dark conviction. 44 years ago, you betrayed me and cut off my ear. The woman, even more confused, looked at him and retorted, you have both ears, don't you? Besides, 44 years ago, I wasn't even born. He simply held his gaze, certain she couldn't remember. Tension exploded when, at that moment, the Hellhound lunged with its mouth open, about to swallow him. Desperate, the woman screamed with all her might, behind you! In a coldly calculated move, Gonghik dodged the boss's bite, causing the woman to be attacked in his place. Her scream was muffled by instant death, her body now trapped between the sharp fangs of that creature. Gonghik, with a look of pure disdain, ordered the mutt not to interfere in his personal fight. With a clean and precise cut, he passed through the middle of the monster, making both heads release a painful growl. The dungeon boss fell defeated. The system announced he had earned the title Massacrer of the Gates of Hell. Besides dealing 100% damage, he received 800 purple coins and 2 more marine coins. Gonghik stopped beside the girl's body, convinced that that end was only the reflection of what she had already done in life. Finally, he called his GM avatar and handed it 21 coins, unlocking the new skill, Devour. Satisfied, he ordered it to devour the avatar of the two-headed Hellhound, believing this skill would be extremely useful in the future. However, a female voice interrupted his thoughts, congratulating him. Turning around, Gonghik faced a small, infernal being. Despite her stature, her feminine attributes were abundant. Sharp horns crowned her head, and her sharp canines gleamed in the firelight. She was a being of darkness. She walked with soft steps and began to speak, explaining that she served Lady Cruesti before introducing herself. I am the succubus Liliane. Gonghik frowned, clenching his teeth as he thought, of all moments, if she saw me devouring a dungeon avatar, she would surely come to erase me. Swallowing his irritation, he asked directly what she wanted. The succubus just let out a light, teasing laugh. Stepping closer, with a sweet and seductive voice, she said, well, you are quite handsome. I have no complaints about your strength either. Even your personality is kind of my type. Gonghik wouldn't be swayed by that chant. Firmly, he brushed her hand off his shoulder and replied bluntly, enough with the small talk. What's your business? Liliane was outraged by the disrespect, but dropped the subject and let out a provocative giggle. So impatient. I came to give you the reward for the hidden mission. It was a dark mission. Kill 5 on the first floor, which had been completed, granting him 3 more sea coins and a vial of Laplace poison. Gonghik was surprised for a moment, but Liliane continued. So, the next mission is to kill 10 on the first floor of Babel. However, that did not spark the slightest interest in him, and he told her to get lost without hesitation. The succubus didn't understand immediately, and he added coldly, I already took my reward, I don't need anything else. The answer, instead of offending her, made her excited. Arrogance was something that turned her on. But she still retorted, don't think you're such a big deal just because things went well on the first floor. I'm going to teach you the true etiquette of Babel. Liliane channeled a dark energy into her hands, which quickly grew and was aimed at Gonghik. But he remained calm and ordered, Administrator Sandalphon, block any approach from demonic missions for a while. Immediately, a giant hand appeared and grabbed the succubus, preventing any action. In the blink of an eye, she disappeared, leaving only her voice echoing, insolent human! Gonghik sighed, already tired of the annoyance, and turned to his avatar. Sorry to interrupt your meal, you can eat at ease. GM opened a monstrous mouth full of sharp teeth and began swallowing the body of the infernal dog. Gong-hik, as usual, lit a cigarette, took a long drag, and when finished, tossed the butt onto the bodies scattered on the ground. I think it's time to get back to playing the team game. Meanwhile, in the village area of the first floor, Azazel stood calmly in the center of the square until he felt the approach of 3 hunters. Recognizing the strongest trio of Babel, he asked, "What do you want?" Gongik answered directly, "I came to accept the mission 100 survivors." Azazel's eyes widened. Lady Cruesti should have explained. The first floor has at most 50 survivors. Any hunter outside that range will be killed by that demon. Young-si, distressed, intervened. Then why not create shared rankings? The angel took a moment to process, but Young-si continued. If more than 50 hunters are tied within the top 50, theoretically 100 people can survive. Azazel found the idea absurd, too difficult to materialize since it didn't depend only on strength. Songhai, however, bowed in respect. But I believe Mr. Gongik can do it. Please just trust him. Azazel's gaze fixed on Gongik. Were you the one who bypassed the ranking record before? She wanted to know if he had some trick to achieve that, but he, with his air of superiority, just requested the mission, and taking the opportunity, already commented on the reward. I will gladly accept the spiritual summoning scroll. Azazel frowned. How do you know about that? She repeated his name as if seeking confirmation. Then, with the heavy silence enveloping the square, she asked the question many had been wondering. After all, how much do you really know about Babel? If you enjoyed today's recap and want more Manhwa content, subscribe to the channel. We're starting this journey now, and I hope that together we can strengthen this new community. So go ahead and like the video, comment for future parts, and share it with your friends. Thank you so much for joining us, and until next time.